So it'll be interesting because here we have two visions. We have the EU and we have the private sector to discuss food and agriculture. Whilst we're waiting for David to appear on our screens, would you like to introduce yourselves?
So thank you very much for having me, Melina. So it's a pleasure to be here today with you. So I'm a newcomer in McCain. So I joined McCain Food Company only 2 months ago. So I'm very honored to be here. Canada is a new territory for me. I worked before in the European food industry, and before that I worked at the European Parliament in my previous life. So I'm in charge of government affairs for McCain. So McCain is an iconic food company, very well known for French fries, for potatoes. So potatoes is the core business for McCain, but not only. We are doing also many other things, such as snacks, appetizers, desserts, and also a transportation company. We have a transportation called Day & Ross in Canada. And Canada and McCain is born in New Brunswick in 1957. And we entered Europe in the 70s. So glad to be here.
So a long-standing company which has grown and expanded. So that's good to know. Luis?
Good morning to everyone. Thanks a lot to the organizers and to Melina for this opportunity of spending some time with you this morning here in this very interesting event. I'm Luis Caraz. I'm the head of the unit in DG Agriculture in the European Commission in charge of agriculture. Why I'm here today, first of all, because I have been invited.
And we're grateful to have you.
Hopefully, I hope that my mission here is to let you know about where we are in terms of the relationship between the Canadian administrations and the European administrations in the agri-food sector. We have CETA, which is the trade agreement that entered into force 4 years ago. We can maybe, during the conversation, had a look at the consequences that the entry into force of this agreement has had for the Canadian and the European agri-food sectors and how the exchanges have increased in the last few years, but hopefully we can also convey a message as to how both partners, Canada and European Union, are intending to look together at the challenges that the agriculture sector is having for the future. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I'm assuming we are still trying to connect to David. Are we? Or are we going to, we'll just continue and then whenever and hopefully soon, when he joins, I will allow him to introduce himself, even if he's late. But I suspect it's not his fault, so we'll let him get away with it. So let's start right away, and it's good that you're here, Luis, because we haven't discussed it. We've mentioned it a little bit, but we do need to go a bit more into it. Is in terms of agri-food imports, Canada grew significantly as a source for EU imports. How did that happen and why?
Okay, I volunteer and I understand you accept that I take the floor. So indeed, the agri-food exchanges on both sides are progressing very positively over the last few years. It is not a surprise, but this is possibly something which has been supported by the entry into force of the free trade agreement that I have just referred to. We have to say, and those of you involved in the trade of agri-food between Canada and the European Union are very well aware of that, is that the mix or the portfolio of the goods that the Union exports to Canada is very different from the portfolio of the goods that the European Union imports from Canada. Most of what we import from Canada on the agri-food sector consists of commodities. Commodities, the market depends on many variables and not only free trade agreements. This largely depends, for instance, on market conditions. And because we are talking about agriculture, this very largely depends on harvest. And harvest depends on climate, on weather, on agriculture and farmers. In the last year 2020, for which we have complete data, a year that has been disturbed in the economy of the entire world for COVID, we note that the exports of agri-food sector, of the Canadian sector to the European Union have increased by 50%. I did not say 15, but 50% in 1 year that has been marked by COVID. This is an extraordinary development. This was, to a very large extent, boosted by a very good harvest in Canada of the stuff that we import most. You name it, rapeseed or soya or durum wheat, which is used by our pasta manufacturers and is very much sought after. So this explains to a very large extent why the year has been so good. We have to say that the European Union also has seen its exports of agri-food increase in this very difficult 2020 year to Canada, nevertheless with a less impressive figure of 2.5%. So hopefully, in the near future, we keep increasing the exchanges on both sides, because at least in what comes to the trade instruments which are in place, this is being made possible. I have referred to before to the main commodities that Canada exports to the Union, but we are also witnessing that there is an increase in the exports of, for instance, vegetables, our preparations, or fruits. All these goods were liberalized in CETA, and therefore we can assume that the fact that no longer tariff apply to the imports of these goods, it's a reason why we are witnessing the increase of these flows. But nevertheless, as we said, and I tried to explain, this is a double benefit game, and we are also exporting increasing quantities of iconic produce of the European Union agri-food sector, including, for instance, cheeses. We have witnessed over the last few years the fulfillment of the TRQ's tariff rate quotas, for those of you who are not familiar with the acronym, that were granted to the European Union through CETA. So I could summarize that weather plays a role, markets, they have their own dynamics, but over the years we have seen an increase of exchanges on both sides, and we are expecting this positive dynamic to be maintained in future.
Good. Well, thank you very much, and I see that David has joined us, so welcome to the panel. And we just started with the first question, but I'll just take a step back and allow you to introduce yourself so that the audience may get to know you before you start answering questions with us.
Thank you so much for organizing this event this morning. I'm very pleased to be with you. I'm right now located in Marseille. Unfortunately, due to COVID and sanitary reasons, I cannot be with you. I would have loved to be in Brussels with all of you this morning. I believe actually, I'm not sure everybody knows what I am doing. So I am a businessman who starting actually 25 years ago, a company called Seafoodia. We are in the trading, in the distribution of food and seafood products, which I aim to call sustainable seafood products. And I started actually this business back in 1996, exporting actually seafood from Nova Scotia and Newfoundland initially. Some 5 years ago, after seeing I think a terrible world situation facing the ocean, I also decided to create an NGO called Pure Ocean, which I'll be happy to introduce later on this morning. We have 3 questions actually that have been asked to answer during this panel. I'll be happy to give you my visions, tell you maybe more also about my company and very concretely what we have been doing to answer these 3 questions. Knowing I can tell you my answers at the end, I think we are facing major issues in the world today, but there is many solutions, and I see very positive solutions that we can implement answering the 3 questions that were being asked during this panel.
It will be part indeed of the questions, so how we can meet demand and also, take care of the environment in which we live, and how sustainable we can all be. So I'm going to jump right back into the panel. I don't know whether you wanted to add something, Francois-Xavier, to the first question.
Yeah, so I can comment on exports, and I can confirm obviously what Louis just said. It's a double benefit from both sides for EU and Canada. And talking about New Brunswick, so where McCain's come from, the export also rise from Canada to the EU, in particular for some agri-food products, such as maple syrup, such as also frozen potatoes, and frozen blueberries. So yeah, I think the comprehensive tariff, agreement made build some progresses between both sides, and I think we have now to look forward and to move with this comprehensive agreement. And just for you to know that McCain, when created in 1957 in New Brunswick, really decided to go local. So just for you to understand how our business is built, we did a choice to source our potatoes very close to our factories, to our market. So this means that in Europe, for example, we source our potatoes to a radius, to a circle of 150 kilometers from our operation. So even if McCain is a global company, we have also a multi-local approach and a multi-local positioning within the market.
I think it's a healthy approach, and I think more and more businesses are going to go towards that, especially as we have seen in terms of transport being an issue in the past, but also in terms of pollution and using in a better way the resources around us. The question, David, that was asked was in terms of agri-food imports, Canada grew significantly as a source for EU imports, and how it happens and why. So I don't know whether you wanted to add something to this or whether you... So food price inflation looms as agri-food firms reports hiking costs. Are we heading to experience a shift in demand with less meat and more artificial food for less impact on the environment? So here's more how we're adapting, really. Who wants to jump in and answer this question? Go for it, thank you.
I can start. Of course, inflation is eating our business very hard, not only for our operation, but also for our farmers. Just for you to understand our agricultural footprint of McCain, we work globally with 3,500 farmers across the world, and we have a very integrated approach. So we are training them, we work directly with them, we have long-term contracts with them, and obviously you can imagine that inflation also is affecting us, but also our farmers at a very high scale. So it's very a challenging issue. Obviously, we are exposing to a kind of deflationary spiral within the agri-food market, with the price coming down from the retail sector. So this is, I think, a very crucial question for the next years, is how to integrate the external positivity of farming. Because I do believe, it's my personal opinion here, that we do not really pay the real cost of food at the moment. So I think it's a critical issue because we are now used to pay more money for technologies with iPhones and so on. But the fact that consumers are used to pay cheaper and cheaper the price of food, it's not, I think, going into the right direction because the price of food should be paid at the real cost.
Then the farmers would definitely have a better living as well. And I think you're right to remind that maybe we should review our priorities, because it is indeed so easy to spend some money in something that we know is going to be expensive. But I think we are now all understanding from an individual perspective that maybe we need to change our priorities and pay the actual price. But maybe there needs to be some shifts also in in governments, how policies, subventions, and all of the different things. But how is this affecting you, David, in your business, inflation, and how are you adapting to it? Food price inflation looms as agri-food firms report a hike in costs. Are you heading to experience a shift in demand with less meat and more artificial food for less impact on the environment? So we have inflation and we have a demand to be better consumers when it comes to environment. How are you coping with that?
Do you think I can put actually a PowerPoint that I will be sharing with you that will be appearing on the screen, and then I can go through it at the same time?
Definitely, go for it, and it might be easier since you are from a distance.
I believe that, and like I said, I'm doing that for 25 years. To give you an idea on what we do at Seafoodia, we are selling around 100,000 tons per year of mostly seafood products and food products. 100,000 tons per year in pounds, because most of the people I believe here are Canadian, it's around 220 million pounds, or equivalent to I call that in TUs containers, 40 foot, it's around 4,000 or 8,000 TUs. That's the level of what we export, which a third of it roughly is coming from the Canadian waters, and some of it, I think, counted there can come from American waters. We are selling our food and seafood products into 70 countries today at Seafoodia's. And like I say, I'm the founder. We are a team of roughly 100 people. We have offices located in Canada. We are located in Montreal. We are in PEI, Prince Edward Island, Charlestown. We are located in Marseille, France, and located in Peru, in Shanghai, in Lorient, northern France, and more recently in Denmark. We are really what I call a trading company. So what we're trying to do is to sell only sustainable seafood. Meaning, in the seafood industry, if you take really certified, what I call sustainable seafood, and sustainable fishing, meaning fish or industry that should, according to some certifications, still be here in the next, let's say, 100 years. For example, Friend of the Sea, MSC, Marine Stewardship Councils, and so forth. You have certifications that tells you that your fishery is pretty good. In Canada, most of the fishery could be MSC, okay? We're very lucky in Canada. We've done a great job, actually, maintaining the fishing ground. And I believe that overall the fishermen and the farmers in Canada are extremely well treated. I don't see too many strikes recently happening in Canada for fishermen. So for maintaining the livelihood of these fishermen are doing pretty well. Even in the factories, we have issues, as you know, in Canada, because every year we have a lot of the factories we work with that are importing workers from other countries. You will see a lot of people from Filipino, from other countries, from the Far East right now, which are coming by plane actually in PI or Newfoundland to work in the factories because there is a lack of people willing or able to work in factories. I think everybody should be aware of that. So regarding the livelihood of fishermen, regarding the livelihood of the workers from Canada in fish factories, or on the boats, I don't think we have any issues there in Canada. You have many other issues in other parts of the world, and I think we as Canadians should certainly lobby the world, lobby United Nations, so we make sure we don't have behind improving livelihood, I would say, I hear actually slavery, potentially, which is happening in many parts of this world. And that's a major concern we should have for the world, but not for Canada. The point number 2 is about sustainability. About sustainability, most of the fish is sustainable in Canada. At Seafoodia, we are only doing actually the sustainable seafood. Sustainable seafood is only 15% of the world today, 1/5. And I believe probably on the other 85% of the other parts of seafood, which I am not doing any business with out of my company. I excluded, one more time, 85% of the business.
I hear you very well, David, at the moment. We apologize about this. It just, unfortunately, technology can be a funny one. We have been relying on it a lot, and
Two things I wanted to stress. One of them, I think there is something I don't agree with the question. When there is some kind of setting the parallelism with more artificial food and less environmental footprint. This is not the paradigm that we are working on. What the European Union is struggling is to make food production in the European Union sustainable.
well, it's good that you have reminded and corrected on this matter.
So this is, I think, very, very important. This is farm to focus. What about? Maybe we will have the time to go into that in other questions. Second, very rapid reflection I wanted to share with you is the situation of farmers. Farmers are witnessing increasing production costs, which are very largely linked with the increasing cost of energy. And they are having, or they are seeing also the price of food in the supermarkets decline. They are an impossible solution. We need to have a safe planet. We need to have food for all of us, but we have to need farmers. And for this, in the European Union, we have the Common Agriculture Policy, which is in place for 50 years. And our Canadian colleagues in the agricultural authorities are also taking care of their own farmers. We need to have farmers, in particular, in those difficult situations, in order to be fed, so that we are in the position to take care of the planet.
So you would say that the McCain approach to use local farmers is a good one?
Better than it is, but you would understand that I'm not in the position
Oh, no,
to
no, of
take...
course, no. Apologies, I didn't mean to put you in
I'm
an awkward
absolutely
position.
certain it is.
No, but I will then allow Francois-Xavier to develop a bit more on this.
Just one comment on that. I do believe that we should recreate value within the supply chain and to have a more balanced value between producers, processors, and retailers. I think this is a key question and a key challenge for the next years and for also the policymakers in Europe.
So I'm also assuming that policies are being implemented to also help and put back the focus on that, and then up to us as consumers to also then pay the right price so that the farmers can be paid also the right price. And from a sustainable approach, and I would say, David, as well, your company is careful about those matters since you are certified. Let's move on to the next question, and maybe, yeah, it's a bit short now to do that, but we could have emailed maybe. But for the next panel, we'll definitely get it sorted. And it's a shame because that's a question more for you. So maybe, David, how do you evaluate your economic and agricultural footprint and your direct relationships with farmers or seafood providers? So, Francois, go for it.
I can just briefly comment regarding the relationships we have with farmers, because as I mentioned before, we work with 3,500 farmers at global level. So this is really our partners, and I think this is go much far beyond the commercial relations we have with them, because we have agriculture teams who are in direct connection with them to understand their practices, to improve their practices. At McCain, we did a commitment. We took a commitment to have 100% of our surfaces, of our acres, moving to regenerative agricultural practices. I think it's a really important effort for you to understand. It's really to put much more organic matter into the soil, because soils are depleted at global level, but also in Europe. Just to give you a figure, 1/3 of the soils in the world are degraded. So we have to put more organic matter into the soil, and soils have also this ability, and I think it's a magic ability towards other sectors to put carbon back into the soils. And I know that the European Commission is currently working on that at the moment. And I think it's really important because it's really something special to the farming sector, that what we produce, what we sell into to the consumer can be offset in terms of green gas house emission thanks to the soil.
Really looking long term. Do you want to add something on this, Luis?
Yes, maybe we are in Europe in political terms. I think we are in a situation where our policymakers have felt and have communicated to the European citizens that the time to act is now. Environment has always been an issue, a growingly important issue for agricultural matters. But now, with the Green Deal that was announced by the Commission, and with the Farm to Fork, which is the declination of the Green Deal for the agriculture sector, is very clear. The time to act is right now. I would like to refer to something which may sound an anecdote, but I think is very telling. When did the Commission announce the Farm to Fork strategy? May 2020. In May 2020, all of us living in Europe were basically locked down. And many argue this is the worst moment in history for the Commission to announce that getting the environment into the agricultural production was the question to do. And nevertheless, the Commission did it, because it says, no, it is precisely now the moment to do it. Now is the signal that we need to make progress, and we have to take this seriously, and to put this at the center of our policy making. And this is basically something that we are doing. Canadian colleagues are coming up with similar positions. I think on this we are like-minded partners. There is the feeling that the time to act is now. Agriculture, it's in a privileged position to be, to a certain extent, part of the problem, but also to carry many of the answers to the problem. And we need to elaborate as how we can make so that farming gets less damaging for the environment, including for climate change. And as you said, and we are working together with Canadian colleagues very closely on that, how farming itself becomes a part of the answer, a very important part of the answer, in terms of carbon sequestration, in terms of biodiversity, in terms of better protecting our soils. We are determined to put it at the center of our policy, and we are doing that. And what we find with our current contacts with our Canadian counterparts in the public administration is that what we are telling them is something that they share with us to a very large extent. With this, I don't mind, or I don't claim that the answers that are being put forward on both sides of the Atlantic are identical, because the realities are clearly not identical. When we are talking about our land limitations, I guess for a Canadian farmer, this is a joke. When we are talking about the size of our holdings here as compared with the size of the holdings of Canada, this is a joke. But at the end of the day, the challenges are very similar. And since very recently we have discovered and found out, both parties, that we have a lot of common to share in terms of policy making. We are intending to work more closely in future in terms of sitting together, the two administrations are looking together at the future. This is something that was not done before. It has started to be doing now. And hopefully this will produce concrete results in the near future.
And I think you're right to remind that now is the moment, and that we can't postpone important decisions and a change in policies or our own approach to how we consume. So no, you did well to remind, and I think it's actually, the pandemic in that sense was actually quite good, in the sense that everyone actually thought about how they suddenly discovered that there were farms around them, that they went and did their shopping, well, they food shop there and stuff, but still not stopping the reason we're here, actually, Canada, Europe, and how we can best use the resources and adapting to the environment we live in today. I'm looking at you, David, but I don't know whether you'll be able to hear us or both ways. But so I'm going to move on to the next question. How do we achieve global food security against the background of climate change and increasingly scarce freshwater resources?
Yeah, so I can comment on that. So I want to echo the words of Chris. I think time to act is now. It's becoming more urgent. At McCain, our purpose is to celebrate real connection through planet food-friendly practices. So I think it's important, if we are not able now to produce planet-friendly food, you are out of the business. It's, I think, our license to operate also, which is at stake here, and also because the consumer will not buy our products anymore if the practice don't change. I think you mentioned a kind of food revolution. I think the food revolution is happening right now. And when you see how the millennials are consuming, the change is really moving very quickly. If you go to the shops, you can see more and more applications. People are scanning the product. People want to know more about the origin of the food, want to know more about how the food is produced. And I think, yes, there is you mentioned, Louis, the farm to fork strategy, which is a very important milestone in terms of policy making at the moment. We will have some proposal regarding food labeling, to harmonize food labeling. There is an expectation here from the consumer. There will be also some reflection about economic food, environmental footprint labeling as well. So I think, I just want to say that this movement won't only come from the manufacturing, from the food processor, from the industry, but for a more wide ecosystem from consumers, from academics, from farmers. So I think really it's a food revolution, I have to say.
I think you touched a key point here is being better informed, actually. And I think the Commission can help also with that in making sure that consumers are properly informed, because then they make the right choices and they're not going to go and buy something which, hasn't actually paid the right price to the farmers, or that hasn't, actually looked after how they're going to regenerate the soils and all of those points. So good reminders. Luis, do you want to add something on this?
Yes, thank you for that. I think for the moderator, it's a problem that the speakers agree on everything.
I know, but it's good. It shows that we're moving in the right direction. We want to be in a better world.
It is like this. I'm intending to do my best to disagree with Jean-François, but I don't. I don't find a reason to disagree with everything that he is saying. And food security, you mentioned, this is the big concern. What the crisis has shown you something I think is worth mentioning. Year 2020, this terrible year with economic slowdown all over the planet. Systematically, the agri-food sector, if you compare to other sectors of the economy, make better. To the point that the exchanges of agri-food increased in year 2020 worldwide. And this is something that applies at the universal scale, but also at the regional scale. It is amazing that the situation where the ports were closed or there were problems with ships, nevertheless, the exchanges of agri-food still did better than in the preceding year. That's not happened anything like this in any other economic sector. And it is not a mystery, because everybody of us, we need to eat every day. And we will make everything that it takes to eat. So food security is a big question. There is not a single answer. It's not only about short chains. Short chains will play an increasingly important role in future. But the international trade is an element to secure the stability of the agri-food system. In particular, when some countries, as Canada, are specialized in producing commodities, and some other regions of the world, including the European Union, are more specialized in producing processed food. So there is a complementarity, and this complementarity is giving stability to the system. We are working on that. The solution is not going to be a single one. It's going to be a matrix of solutions that possibly will develop in a way that we can hardly imagine or figure out today. But sustainability, as you said, is going to be the question. And the Commission is thinking, for instance, in terms of labeling, about creating a legal framework, which is going to be difficult, but it's very ambitious and challenging, which is about securing the consumers that foods are sustainably produced. So that when you are having anything, including meat, which is one of the products which is most often put into question, you know that when consuming this particular food, you are doing something which is not bringing any harm to the planet. That's the challenge.
And that's a great challenge, but and I believe it's also important to also give the means to the farmers to be able to meet that, because we have put so much pressure, I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but we've put pressure on everyone to produce so much more because there's so many more of us and we want so much more choice. So as consumers, we'll be able to read the labels and we're grateful. I'm very grateful for it. But I want to make sure that, we've, I don't know how to explain it best, but sort of we really ask farmers to produce and use pesticides which were approved in the past and all of these things. And we've decided that sushi was incredibly fashionable and very good, so we did loads of overfishing and all of these things. But it's being able for those people who produce to be able to produce better while still being able to make a living, because they will not be able to produce massively. They shouldn't be producing as they were. Everyone should be producing at a sustainable level.
Yes, fantastic. So we're getting there. Tech is sometimes working well and sometimes not as much working well. Regarding sustainability, I believe it is very, very, very much impacting our business today. We are facing a major issue and concern, not only in the industry, but really from the human being, especially here in Europe. I believe that after COP21 in Paris, and facing the issue about reaching 2030 with some goals with the climate change. If you hear me, you still hear me well? So I'll continue on sustainability. So like I was saying, I believe there is a huge impact on sustainability in the industry after COP21. And there is a very big concern for every consumers about the impact we have on the CO2 carbon print impact of all our business, and where the impact the impact of food actually on health and the human being. I think there is two aspects to that. In Europe here, as you know, we have now these new scores. You have a score right now which is called, for instance, the Nutri-Score, which is the food score from 1 to 5, which tells you really if the food is good for you, it will be a green, and if the food is not good for you, it will be a red, right? For example, of course, a very good sardine, pelagic, so mackerel or herring from Canada will be a green, and let's say a very bad maybe soda with lots of sugars will be okay, a 5 will be a red. This from now on in every pack in Europe and in France, we can already see it happening, will be happening on every pack. We will see that being spread throughout the world. That will be impact number one, which is happening. And the good news is we are doing actually good food from Canada, and we are doing food that comes naturally from the farmers, and not too many transformed goods. I hear in the past that, we had to transform the goods. Yes, we need to transform the goods with good product, making sure we remain green. And for every producers in Canada, I think it should be a very big concern of remaining green, otherwise the good will not be sold. And the impact on health is something that is a very, very big concern to the end users and to the distributors, to the supermarkets. The second thing is the impact it has on the planet, which now is not the Nutri-Score, but it's the planet score. The planet score is something that just started very recently, which really tells you on every products, every goods, every food product that we have, what has been the impact on the planet. We go back to the carbon print issue. The carbon print issue, which can be actually monitored from, for example, transport, but also during the growing of the product itself. Let's take two examples and two different impacts. Of course, when you are, let's say, selling herring or mackerel, okay, the product comes naturally from nature. We are fishing it and we are packing it, exporting it. You had very little impact as the product was growing itself. When we are selling beef, let's say, or other products, of course, we had much more impact on the carbon print issue. And that's something that you will see on the Planet Score from now on. And that's something we didn't know before. There is no distributors that are not already asking us what the impact is on the pack and to the consumers. And they're even asking us now more and more the full traceability of the goods from the production, from fishing ground to the end users. Some other tech words will be called blockchains, but it's just traceability. And it is a very big concern. Okay, once I say that, if we go back to sustainability, now the big issue is on our supply chain or on all that to connect and get all this information so we have it all the way at the end to the consumer, which eventually will be on their smartphone. Because what the consumer wants is really to have it on the smartphone. And I was part of a tech in Paris summit some weeks ago, and really you can see everything will have to come down to how a consumer will be able on a pack to trace entirely a product and the sustainability of a product. So it's a major concern of the world today, which has to happen very fast. And I believe for Canada it is a huge opportunity, because Canada, of course, is a nature world, is a huge country. There is a lot of goods, natural goods to feed the world, and a lot of opportunities. And even species or products we have never sold before, I believe we will have a market for. And products we were not selling will be sold.
Good. Well, thank you for your input, which was good to hear. I don't know whether, gentlemen, you want to, yes, go for it.
I can briefly comment on what David said about the front of pack labeling. Just for you to know, so McCain did the choice and was a pioneer to implement the Nutri-Score. So we have Nutri-Score for 100% of our products we sold in France, Belgium, Germany for our consumer. And I think it's a voluntary scheme at the moment. So we hope that there will be more harmonization on that. We hope that Nutri-Score will be the preferred scheme, because I think it's important for the consumer, but it's also key for the companies. And why that? Because I think it's also an effort for the company to improve the quality of the product. It's also it allows us to reformulate some of our product, and at the end, I think it's easy to read information for the consumer, because as you know, when you go to the market, when you go to the retailers, the consumer made a choice in 5 seconds max. So you have to understand clearly the label, and at the moment there is a profusion of label and not harmonized label, and this I think should be less complex, and it's also a call from my side for the policymakers to have more harmonization in that area. And on top of that, just to build on what David said about the cooperation between Canada and EU, we saw at the beginning that there will be more regulatory cooperation between Canada and EU, and I think it's an opportunity to learn from Canada and from EU on both sides on food as well.
Thank you for bringing the debate back to Canada, Europe as well. Luis, do you want to add something?
Very briefly, I confirm that one of the proposals in the Farm to Fork is to try to move into the harmonization of the labeling systems. It's very complex. There are several systems. It's voluntary, as you said, but there is work to be done here. That's the only thing I could add.
Good. Well, thank you very much. And David, I understand you can hear us, and hopefully we can hear you when we move on to the next question. What is the cost of a move towards more sustainable agriculture that would meet the demand of the changing marketplace?
Yeah, I think so. This question has been raised before and by David, but I can comment from my side. For sure, it has a cost, and the key question is how to take into account this cost into the supply chain. So here, my view is I think we have to find new way to reward farmers beyond the production. I think it was we already mentioned that at the beginning of our panel, but I think it's really important, and here we have to count on the support of the policymakers to find new way of rewarding farmers. Because farmers cannot be only rewarded based on what they produced, but because they are also playing a good part in maintaining the quality of the soil as a stewardship of the countryside, of the lands. So I think it's really a critical question. And I can just comment that at McCain we are really committed to produce planet-friendly food. It's again our commitments to move towards regenerative agriculture practices. It's really crucial for the perennity of the system, for the long-term vision of the system, because, as mentioned by Louise before, if we want to continue to produce in Europe with the quality we have, there is this question of maintaining the generation of farmers. Just for you to know, at McCain, almost 50% of our farmers work with them for a period of more than 10 years. So we hope to continue that, but we are not sure because there is less attractivity for the farmer at the moment. So I think it's critical to move the needle here.
Do you think Europe can help with all of that as well?
I don't have the figure for the cost, but what I do know is that the cost of not acting will be much, much higher. So there is no option. And because the costs will be nevertheless important, and the benefit of this investment will be all of us, it is only natural that this cost is split or divided. So the companies will have to play a role, the consumers will have to play a role if they really do want to have access to actually sustainably produced food, and the public powers, they will have to play a role by making the best possible use of the taxpayer money in supporting this evolution. And this is exactly what we are intending to do.
In regards to the question, which is the cost of moving to sustainable agriculture and sustainable fishing, my opinion is that we have no choice right now. And I would like to use some of what the presidents of some European countries have said when we had COVID issues here. It was about the whatever it takes. I believe that it's the whatever it takes should be applied also to the farmers and to the fishermen in regards to going to sustainability. I believe that money, in a way, I know most of the countries in the world have debts, but we're facing the fact that we're not responsible with nature, some of the industries, and we are really hurting the planet. Too bad for the future generation. And that's something we no longer can, because whatever is being, when we hurt the planet, it's forever. So whatever it takes actually to make sustainable food industry, whether fishing or agriculture, has to be done. Though that means, yes, we need to work with the fishermen, we need to work with the farmers, we need to transform the industry as quickly as possible at whatever cost it takes. I also believe that we will have more craftsmen. I think we will have more individual people that going to work with tech actually, and I think we will make fisherman world, agriculture world more sexy. I mean, who really wanted to do agriculture industry or be a fisherman or grow potatoes or things like that? I don't think it was something that was very sexy in the past up to now. And I believe that the jobs with nature, going back with working on nature, will be the sexy jobs from now on for the future generation. And this is certainly something we as entrepreneurs and we as politicians need to talk about. This is the best job, which is to be a fisherman, to be a farmer. How great! We are feeding the world, and it will be more and more, of course, sustainable for the younger generations, and to do it with fine, good, healthy products through the world to fill the planet. And of course, when you see, we're able on farming now, Here, for example, in our town, in Marseille, we can see now we have new farmers coming in the cities. And on very small scales, these guys are able to grow not one species, not only tomatoes, but 20 species in a very small scales of things. You cannot put machines anymore. This is the human being that go and pick. And we're feeding the people like that. So there is new ways of doing agriculture, which is the way we were doing it actually for 40, 50 years ago, which is working really, really well. And I believe we're going back to that. But at the end of the day, to your question, which is it urgent? Yes. And it's, in my opinion, so urgent that whatever cost it is, we need to do it. And I think it's as urgent as look at COVID right now. For health reason, we have spent a fortune. I mean, every state in the world has spent a lot of money. I think it's same and very urgent in industry for, at the end, we will be saving costs, because if we have fine products, good food products, we will be healthier. That means at the end of the day, we spend less in the industry of medical world, and we got less to the hospital world, which right now are the one making probably more money. So something's wrong in the whole industry, in my mind, when it starts with food and air, where we need to invest a lot of money.
It's an important point you make, and I think we all agree that now is the time to think about what we eat, and to accept that we have to change our habits, and we need to be better informed to make those better choices. And I'm afraid it's already the end of this panel, so unless there is a question, someone that has a burning question, then I propose that you come to the two live panelists. And David, we hope to see you in person next time. And no doubt we have your contact details if anyone wants to be in touch and ask you some more direct questions. And so this will be the end of this panel. Thank you very much to the three of you.